believe it or not, 2023 was the first time we ever saw a high schooler officially dip under the 10-second barrier. And although this performance was later redacted, it's like a metaphorical dam wall had been lifted, and the upcoming 2 years would see a flood of high schoolers run sub 10 seconds multiple times with legal wind. And even then, 2 others without legal wind. But the other day at the Blue Bonnet meeting out in Texas, we would see the youngest athlete to run sub 10 seconds in the 100 meter ever, and holy smokes, he would utterly destroy it.
10-year-olds in the world, 987. I told you folks.
16-year-old Dillon Mitchell would separate from the gun against his high school competition, drive like a bullet, and the race was done from the halfway mark. And yeah, it was a real 988, but with a ridiculously strong tailwind of 5.8 meters per second. It's almost laughable. There is no denying just how strong a wind that is. There are flags wailing in the background, tents are barely holding on for survival in the outfield, and it's pointed perfectly at their back to the utmost benefit of the sprinters. Still, this time makes him the 3rd fastest high schooler ever in all conditions, only behind Maurice Gleaton and Braden Williams, who ran 982 in their senior years last year with varying wins themselves. And frankly, to be the 3rd fastest high school athlete all time as a sophomore, 2.5 years left of high school, is utterly outrageous. But if there was any 16-year-old athlete to run this type of time, it would be him. Dillon Mitchell is currently the age grade world record holder in the grade 14 boys 100 meter with a time of 10:45. The grade 15 boys 100 meter with a time of 10.17, and the grade 16 60 meters with a time of 6.59 seconds only last week at the US Indoor Championships. So in saying that, at this rate, the sub 10 second barrier is only right around the corner, is what you might think. According to a Twitter post, his windy 988 adjusted to a 0.0 meter per second wind would be 10.02 seconds, and with a maximum allowable legal wind of 2.0, it would be a ridiculous 994. So that's it, case solved. Not really. Using a more reliable wind adjustment calculator with a neutral wind, his time supposedly would be 10.1 seconds. And then, using another calculator just for good measure, says 10.15, and 10.03 with a maximum 2.0 wind. Usually these calculators are pretty accurate, when wind is within the reasonable amount that is. And that's because there's a lot of data to estimate accurate times within wind ranges of -3 to 3 meters per second. But getting into that +5 meter per second territory, the data pool is so small, we just don't get accurate readings. And unfortunately, the only real way to tell would be if this race was a heat and he ran the final the next day.
Oh, would you look at this?
Yeah, well.
Would you look at that?
So actually, he ran a final the very next day, 10.19 seconds with a 1.4 tailwind, which isn't even a new PR. A bit lackluster considering what each calculator was predicting, but also proves these young athletes are somewhat human. And of all people, Aaron Brown made a good point after this time dropped.
For you to have to open your season and run 4 races, it's tough. Especially running the 1 and the 2 and running faster than your body ever went and then having to come back and do it again the next day. If it was just 1 round and they ran it today and it was legal win, I think he would have ran about 10-0.
Mitchell had recently just flown from New York back to Texas this week after competing in the 60 meter at the US Indoor Championships, a level of competition he's never run at before. Then he ran an electric wind-assisted time of 988 and 20.22 in the 200 meters within the same couple hours. And then finally, the very next day, he towed the line to run this 1019. That's a heck of a lot of high-level racing in the leagues of a 16-year-old. So unlike some people online, I don't think this 1019 fraud checks his 988, or is even a close assessment of what type of form he's actually in. And really, it's impressive he even ran this fast after doing that much racing. So yeah, I agree with Aaron. The fatigue had finally built up, and seriously, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a 10 flat in the legs had the winds been reasonable on the day he ran 988. And if we're really honest, his 988 performance should really take a backseat to what he did at the US Indoor Championships in the 60 meter. He ran a 6:59 in the heats. That's an age grade 16 world record in which he was lining up against professionals like Trayvon Promell, who was a previous world champion in this event. And he ran well. And again, this was a heat. He clearly had more to give. Unfortunately though, in the final, He stumbled off the blocks, yet still managed to come home in 6.6 seconds flat. Of course the times are amazing, they're world records after all, but more importantly, he lined up against some of the world's best and managed to run his best races at 16 years old, minus the stumble. Not all youth athletes have that type of mentality this early, and none of this even mentions the fact he's not only 16 years old, he's 16 years old and 3 months. Nowhere near 17, and it's also his first 100 meter of the year after a packed indoor. The contrast of a windy 988 and then a 10:19 legal is a bit startling, so I understand some of the fair skepticism until you really focus in on the finer details. And all of this is to say, I have no doubt he'll be running a 10 flat legally this year, and he even has a really good chance at going under it, which in turn would make him the youngest athlete to ever run sub 10 seconds officially. But now, and there's always a but when it comes to my videos, if all you wanted was good vibes, you can leave this video, because we're about to enter a more grey zone. I want to talk about where I see an athlete like him going. So feel free to rebuttal me in the comments. Clearly, we have never seen an athlete this fast, this young. Mitchell is a very well-trained athlete for his age. You can see that in his physique, in his race, and when he lines up against pros. For example, at the US Indoor Champs the other week, he has the power of a grown man. He wasn't a step behind Trayvon Bromell, one of the best starters in the game. And I don't know if having that much power this early is a good thing, because where does he go from here? When we look for examples of athletes like him, there is no better example than the athletes whose records he broke, and that being Sachin Dennis. Dennis ran similar times, 10:51 at 14 and 10:20 at 15. Just from looking at his races, you can tell he was a mature athlete for his age, and like Mitchell, he had a start that separated him from his competitors his age. Yet as of today, at age 23, he's still yet to run sub 10 seconds. And even among the breakout high schoolers these past few years, I'd say both Christian Miller and Braden Williams run similar races to Mitchell. Absolute bullets from the gun, great drive phases, with varying levels of top end speed. And although it's very recent since both these athletes graduated high school, Miller struggled hard in his first year as a professional, not even getting close to cracking 10. And Williams, he struggled hard when he matched up against the other phenoms of his class, that being Gleaton and Taylor. But I will give him the benefit of the doubt for now, he is yet to race properly in the NCAA. I just don't know where Mitchell finds further speed. Does he become an even stronger starter, in which he's basically already at an elite level at? Or does he suddenly become a great finisher? Because after being a fan for such a long time, I don't think I've ever seen any athlete in history go from a great starter to a great finisher. Generally, from a pretty early age, your race is usually just your race, and you get better by playing to your strengths. There is no doubt Mitchell is a freak, and he might just run 9.9 this year and become the youngest ever to do it. But there's also no doubt he is a very developed athlete for his age, and his start-heavy race pattern isn't a sign you want to see in an athlete so young. And that's it for the week. And besides another pole vaulter jumping over 6 meters,
Oh, he's done it!
Corrales had some really close attempts at 6.20 meters.
Oh, boy.
I'm telling you, Duplantis is shaking in his boots right now. See you all next week for the indoor NCAA champs and the high school champs. I'll be pumping out 2 videos, it's going to be a big one.